everybody to vertical.
We are on out there. Let me see it. Okay. So I'm not sure where we're kind of lacking some people today. Good to have you two back.
Thank you.
Very much so. Good to have Marshall and Wendy. I don't know what's going on. Kendall, do you know anything about Wendy?
No.
Okay.
No. We had lunch with them last Sunday, and there wasn't anything that came up then, and we haven't talked to them since then.
Okay. And Carly, you may know, or Janice and them, did you give her a hard time, or they tried one today? Okay. Well, it is good to see.
Am I out of your sight lines if I sit here?
There, you were perfect. Everybody is in the sight lines today. So it is good to see folks that were here. We're going to leave our door open a bit and see if some more comes in, unless the kids are going bananas next door. But so let's open with prayer. Father, just Lord, thank you for our pastor leading us with his sermon today. Father, thank you for the encouragement and for the challenge to stand firm for all of us. Lord, all across this church, people are teaching from the little ones to others on up. And Father, I ask that you would be with every teacher and situations. Lord, especially for the youngsters and teenagers, Lord, give the teachers patience, and Father, give them wisdom as they share. Father, for every class, we pray for listening ears and discernment as we're looking at your word. In your name I pray. Amen. And before I forget, Stacy is not doing well. You know, Tim Birdsell's wife. And Tim, if you don't know, was one of the guys who spoke this morning talking about his Sunday school class covers the same material we do. She's very serious, so continue praying for her, and they're looking again for a living liver donor for transplant purposes. And then Mr. Foy's wife, Mr. Foy he was up there too today. If you don't know Mr. Foy, he's always got a joke. He first thing when he sees you coming in, he has a joke. And so it's always fun to hear him do that. So we are switching to 1 Peter. We are getting in the New Testament. And 1 Peter is so different from Leviticus, it's almost ridiculous how different it is. We're going to have to hang in there. There's a ton of theology in 1 Peter. So I'm going to work on trying to breaking some of it down kind of in little slivers so we can begin to dive into it. So we're looking at the first chapter of 1 Peter. We are not doing all the verses in it. We're kind of going to do the intro and then where he's going to do. So our inheritance. Just some high points of 1 Peter, because you need to know about who wrote 1 Peter. Who do you think wrote 1 Peter? Peter. Yeah. Peter wrote 1 Peter. You know, it's nice to know for sure who writes these books, because like Hebrews, we're not sure who wrote it. But 1 Peter, we're sure. Now think about 1 Peter. Think about Peter. On the day, early morning that Jesus was going to be crucified, what did Peter do? Do you remember what he did? He denied Jesus 3 times.
3 times.
And so when you look this was written sometime in the 60s AD, and 30-something years, how that man has changed from denying Jesus to being one of the preeminent apostles. It's just testimony to what Jesus did in his life. Now, what was going on? Major persecution of Christians under Nero. So the thing that Nero, pardon?
Do you want me to shut the door?
Yeah, that Nero fiddled while Rome burned. I don't know about that one, but Nero was horrible to Christians. And we'll talk about that in a little bit to get some idea of what Nero did to Christians. And so, two major things. One would make Christians got an inheritance. And then to tell those people that Peter's writing to, stand firm under persecution. And I tell you, once we look at the kind of persecution he was doing, we can't even begin to relate about what that kind of persecution was. So this is kind of where I'm, the phrase setting the table, I want to kind of set the table for 1 Peter. Okay. I'm not going to read all this, that's a lot, but I wanted to get it all up here and look a little bit about why Nero was doing what he did. There's a combination of reasons why he did. So one reason, and I'm on that third thing, Christians, he persecuted them for political reasons. He was an
Authoritarian.
Say that again, because I'm struggling with it.
Authoritarian.
Thank you. I can depend on y'all. And he was often at odds with various groups in Roman society, including the Senate, the military, and the Jewish population. So here's this group out here that's just adding to difficulties for him. Okay? Now, Christianity was seen as a threat to the established order. Christians worshipped one God, Jesus. Well, God, Jesus, Trinity. Okay, what gods did Romans worship?
Anything, burgers, anything.
They had a whole list of anything that they couldn't figure out. Why does the sun rise and set? Yeah, all this stuff. They worshiped that. So, and who told them they had to worship these things? Nero and the whole set of Romans. So they're standing firm. And we know Christians were martyred because of what? Because of their belief in a Savior. Okay?
I think I've read before that Nero at first was not anti-Christian, but then later for political reasons and all these other reasons he became anti-Christian.
Because Christianity was such a threat to him. Christianity was a threat to the order of things. Mm-hmm. So if I remove the threat, and it was a really fast-growing religion. I mean, really fast-growing. And think Rome sitting in there, and ultimately Paul was sent to Rome where he was in prison. What is even the Church of Rome doing? It's growing. Mm-hmm. So everything is set up to make Christianity the perfect group to be persecuted by Nero.
Yeah, I think Rome's fear too was the fact that they thought they were untouchable, that it wasn't going to reach them.
Right.
And when it did, especially losing Paul.
Can we tamp it all down?
Right.
But by 300s, the official religion of the Roman Empire was Christianity. Mm-hmm. I'm drawing a blank on the emperor. Kendall, help me out. The emperor who converted. It was at Constantinople. There was a big battle. And he said, maybe if I convert to Christianity, God might help us win. So I have to look.
And he equated Christ with Apollo.
Right. The
Christ and Apollo.
When the emperor was converted.
Yeah.
Okay.
He saw Christ and Apollo as different names for the same person.
So maybe I can get him on my side. Now, how did he persecute Christians? And I picked this from a kind of a history website. It was marked by extreme brutality and cruelty, and some of the most horrific methods of execution were reserved for those who refused to renounce their faith. Nero preferred to publicly execute either in events he held personally organized or at regular I'm having real difficulty talking today, state-sponsored times. Where we've seen it in the movies, where were the state-sponsored times or a place happened in Rome?
And Colosseum is one of the places.
The
in
Colosseum.
Nero's Gardens. The emperor you're looking for earlier is Constantine the First.
Constantine, so the place was named Constantinople. Christians were pitted against savage animals such as dogs, of course we know lions, and a gruesome display of violence and bloodshed. At others, victims were crucified. And I didn't know this last one. Another particularly gruesome form of execution was to burn Christians alive as human torches. And the website said that Nero had this big garden that he would often hold events in. So he would put like Christians on a stake, so if I'm explaining it, and would set them on fire to use them to light the gardens. So when we talk about the persecution of Christians, it was at one of the most extreme things. I mean, do I confess Christ, or do I say I not want to believe in Jesus when I know what's going to happen to me? So no wonder he was writing to the church. Peter's writing to, well, it's multiple churches he's going to write to. Now, inheritance. This is an inheritance from my daddy. I mean, he didn't write it in the will to say, this is, Tracy gets it. This is a tea pitcher that my daddy made tea in for, I don't know how many, since I was a little kid all the way on to my adult years. Daddy made the tea. Now, in the South, you use the actual tea leaves. And and it was so dark and so sweet, if you heated it up, you could put it on pancakes. Because it was like that. But I have that sitting on my counter in my kitchen, and because that's one, it was thing that brings back so many memories. So it's a precious thing from my daddy. Now, we have just been working through the process with an attorney in Annapolis who specializes in estate. An estate doesn't mean you have this huge house and all that stuff. Millersville, we got a little, just a cute little house, okay? It's not a big house. So we've been working and so we plan for the future. We have an inheritance for our kids. And so we got everything under the sun we've done with them. We got powers of attorney, and we've got advance directives, and we've got 2 wills, and it sort of just goes on. And we set up 2 revocable trusts, so everything goes. We're skipping probate for the kids. They're not gonna have to go through any of that. But we were planning for the future because we want them to easily have whatever inheritance. You don't have to have tons of money to know you're given something. So let's look at the inheritance that what Peter's going to talk about. Now it starts out, we'll look at the map in a minute. You know, we're looking at the map because we need to look. This letter was circulated around to a number of different churches. It wasn't just like Corinthians just went to the church at Corinth there. Did I ever tell y'all there was a church down the road from my grandmother's house, and the name of the church was Corinth Baptist Church. And the church at Corinth struggled, and Paul would stay on their case about them not being faithful. Why on earth would you name a church Corinth Baptist Church? I figured they didn't read their scriptures very much to know. They have named themselves after a church that struggled with wickedness. Anyway, let's, yeah, isn't that crazy? That was just that crazy. Okay, so he's gonna introduce himself, and remember in letters and the New Testament, where do we put our signature on a letter?
At the
At
bottom.
the bottom. Nobody writes letters anymore. We send emails, and you look at the signature because it's strictly in the from line. Okay, we put ours at the bottom of the letter. These letters and that style, then the signature of who wrote it was put at the top. Okay, so here he goes. Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ. Peter. Thank you. I don't know. If Thea were in here, she would say, "Mama, did you take your medicine?" You know, because I have epilepsy and I take medicine, so, and it can muck up with my speech. Okay. Why did he call himself an apostle of Jesus? What comes with identifying himself as that?
His authority.
His authority. So right off the bat, he's going to say, I've got the right to talk to you. Because, I mean, what did Peter do for 3 years?
Walked with Jesus.
He walked with Jesus.
He walked side by side, yeah.
So, I've got the right to speak to you because I know what I'm going to talk about. Now, here we go. To God's elect, here are some cities. In exile. We call this area where the eras are today, what country would that be? Turkey.
Yep.
This is modern day Turkey. And he gives, these places are not little cities. These places are provinces. So think of them as states. So we've got the one of Pontus, which is all the way over on the far right. That area is hanging down completely out of the Black Sea. Okay, we've got Galatia. They got another letter from Paul, because he wrote the letter to the church at Galatia. That era, because I'm not sure, can y'all see the text? Okay, you see where Galatia is. Then Cappadocia, you see Cappadocia. Now, he says Asia. I couldn't find a province named Asia, at least
I think that means the whole area.
I think it
that the whole Asia. Okay, that makes sense.
Which is odd because we call Asia the
We
Far
think
East.
Asia's further east. And then the last one is Bithynia, and you can see where it's right across the sea from Greece. And we don't know how the gospel got there. Have no idea. But the gospel is spread pretty wide when you think all these different areas must have an established church. So it's like, remember, excuse me, chain letters?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't send it on, what's going to happen to you?
Bad luck.
Bad stuff is supposed to happen to you if you don't do chain letters. And that was back in the day. We did them in school and sent them. But we didn't have copiers. And you had to write that thing. Remember doing that? Excuse
I
me.
remember burning a lot of chain letters. It was fun.
And it was fun. It's sort of like these things on somebody's Facebook page, you know, and if you really care, I'm getting something to suck on. If you really care, you'll post this on your page. Huh?
You
Yep.
know, like it or upload it or something.
I never post. I may agree or think it's a worthy cause to support, but personally, I don't copy and paste. That's just me. So we got who's writing this, we get his authority, and we know where it's going to be sent. So this will be a chain letter that is valuable, that will be carried around all this area of Turkey. Isn't it interesting? What's the major religion of Turkey today? Do you know?
Isn't it Islam?
Islam. So it's interesting to think how Christianity grew so, and some of these others that don't have an era, when we looked at Paul's letter to the Galatians, those areas had a church had been established. So, let's get that thing. We're going to do, a lot of times, if you start the next section, you got to go back and read the prior section again, so it'll make sense. To God's elect, exiles scattered throughout the provinces of those 5 words that are really hard to pronounce, except from Asia. Okay. Who have been chosen, so this group from these 5 areas, according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, through the sanctifying work of the Spirit, to be obedient to Jesus Christ and sprinkled with his blood. Grace and peace be yours in abundance. Now that last little bit down there, when would we put that on our letter?
Probably at the end.
Yeah, we'd say, love, Tracy. That's the equivalent of what that is right there. So they really turn around how they write a letter. So when we look at the 3 things in there, we have God the Father. Who else do we have? We have the Spirit, and we have Jesus. So the understanding of the Trinity has really gotten stronger in those 30 years. Now, foreknowledge, that's a weird word. We don't use that word do we use that word for anything much? I don't think we use foreknowledge. We could say, if we don't pay our income taxes, we have foreknowledge that that's a bad thing. And stuff may happen to us if we don't pay our income taxes. But when we look at what that word means in this thing, it means God has knowledge of the past, of the present, and of the future. So God has knowledge of the whole thing. Now, talks about the Spirit sanctifying.
This is sometimes used as one of the supports for the Calvinist view that history is already preordained.
Yeah, I'll say that again because everybody might not have heard it. For those who believe the Calvinist perspective of their faith, and Josh would always refer to himself as the Calvinist in the corner, because he believes everything Christian, but he sees God as God knows. Of course, he knows everything that's going to happen in the future, but he also knows that it's in a limiting way that in essence, if you're really strict Calvinist, then you believe salvation is not offered to all Christians because God already knows what's going, in essence, to happen. On vacation at times, we've sat around and debated Calvinism. Now, I don't believe that way. I believe the way I look at it is Arminianism. I don't know why it was named that.
Because a guy named
Arminius.
Arminian was famous for including it in all of his philosophical comments.
Okay, there was a person. Kendall, thank you. Historian sitting right there. Arminians believe that God planned for the gospel to go to everybody.
Right.
And see the word, the thing that Calvinists want, who've been chosen according to the foreknowledge of God. See, if you're not in the chosen section, I believe that all God's elect, we've all been chosen. You got to make a decision, but we've all been chosen. So we'll keep our sweet our Calvinist person over in the corner. We've had some interesting discussions about this whole concept. And neither one of us have changed our opinion. But it's okay. We still, a couple of years ago, we were sitting around at the beach. The whole family, we were down on the thing. We started talking about that, and was other daughter and her husband, Thea and Josh, us. And there happened to be a Jewish family sitting, I don't know, the beach isn't crowded down there, but sitting on the beach beside us. And there'd been a few things said that I knew they were Jewish. I don't know, probably cultural, And all I could think is, here are these Christians sitting around talking about salvation and who's supposed to be saved and Calvinism, and I thought, they must think we are absolutely crazy to be doing that, but that was okay. So the Spirit sanctifies us. So to be sanctified, we're made more holy. We are made more like Him. Is it hard in our culture to be more like Him?
In our culture?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's all in the air. You got it on your cell phone, everywhere. And
Everything's just such an easy access
yeah.
to whatever it is that you wanna see and do and whatever, but
And there's very few in our culture saying, you can't do
you
it.
can't, right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They're pushing for you to be like this.
yeah.
So it's like a push, like here you go, it's always in your face, and it's, we talk about that sometimes.
Mhm.
When we were growing up as kids, how we didn't have all this. We were outside playing till the street lights went on, and came back home, and stuff, and kids don't know that nowadays.
Nah, they do
My
like that.
daughter actually makes her children go outside and play every single day to get them away from all the iPads and everything. She literally makes them go out, and she has them all in sports and everything, because she doesn't want them to be that
Always.
child.
Yeah, today if you ground your kids, you don't make them stay in the room, you make them stay outside.
Yeah, there you go.
You
That's a
take
good
them
If
off
you're
the
grounded, you're
electronics.
grounded to the yard.
Yeah.
Emily has got, I think, a lot tougher job now than when I did. We were raising our kids
Yeah, sure.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
Because of how different the culture is. Now, I'm not, but what is Emily doing that's gonna help her immerse Savannah in the right kind of culture?
Bringing her to Sunday school.
Bringing her to church,
Yeah.
and she goes to her Sunday school class, and she has her sitting in worship with y'all. And so you're putting a fence around her, and but I don't mean to keep pointing at you.
I like being the center of attention.
We like being the center of attention. But how many of Emily's adult family or friends sees the value of, and you're kind of in your circle of family and friends, not acquaintances, but friends, how many of them see the value of that and are in church every Sunday?
Not many.
Not many. Not many. Which makes it harder for them to raise her up right, because even within the family, the push is somewhere else.
My daughter, I'm sorry.
Go on.
My daughter-in-law she teaches elementary school down in Chincoteague, Virginia. And it's a public school, but it's more private than public because their graduation class is only like 12 or 15.
Much smaller.
To where the outside groups are like maybe 150 to 300. And the classes are a lot bigger, but they actually keep Jesus in the school because it's public, but it's more because of
Within
the
that
area
community.
that in the
Yeah.
community, and a lot of people do that. So You know, it's just like our grandson, he doesn't go, he only comes when he's here with us, but we teach him, we downloaded the Bible on his phone app, cause he has a phone now.
Right.
He sleeps with that.
Yep.
He turns it on every night, and if he doesn't have it on, he tosses and turns and tosses and turns. Soon as you put that app on, it just soothes his soul, mellows him out, and he'll sleep all night long. It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
Numb. Time you hear it, he's just like,
It just,
Cause all the kids believe, but, you know, it's just like you saying around yours and all, but what, probably 70% of them don't go to church.
right.
They don't go into Sunday, they keep saying they want to, but the area that they're in, there really isn't much around there,
Yeah.
so it's hard for them.
and I would like to piggyback off of him, because what he said, you give him, you say, hey, punish, you gotta put them outside. Because
Yeah.
if you don't, they're in their room like this.
Yeah.
They'll find a way, they will
Or
find
they
a
get a
way,
cell phone and they like this.
yeah.
Punish, you gotta put them outside.
Yeah,
You gotta
punish them
put 'em-
nowadays is putting them outside,
So you
I
can't-
like that.
Yeah, I like what he said, put them in the
Kendall,
yard, say, "Nah, you ain't going out the
started
yard."
something. Punish, put them outside. Oh, that's good. Okay, Kendall, would you read, this one, cause we're now starting to get into inheritance ideas.
Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade.
Have y'all inherited anything that is in the process of perishing, spoiling, or fading? I'll even use a different word, that you may have passed that inheritance, see if somebody else wants it, because it's not something that is gonna be a part of your life. Spoil or fade. I have, and if you want them, I'll be glad to give them to you. I have some pillowcases that Fred's mom embroidered I don't know what you call the end of a pillowcase, but beautiful hand embroidery on it. So I never put it on a pillow to be used on a weekly basis, because I just wouldn't.
Saving it,
Uh,
saving it for the future.
For
You don't want
kids
them
to
to get
throw
messed
away.
They
up.
don't want it. Nobody wants it. Which I don't know whether that's sad or bad, but I've kept it, and I'm kind of sentimental about things. I've kept it in a drawer for, I don't know, 20 years.
Yeah, I know, because I had quilt blanket, and my little brother, right, he had a pillowcase. He carried that pillowcase too, with this big. He went to college with that same little piece of screen.
I just inherited a piece of it's a picture.
Yeah.
Actually, you were talking about that crocheting and stuff. My aunt,
Yeah.
she did it. It's a picture, a flower pot and
Okay.
everything.
It took it
And
2
it's
years.
actually, she is 86. So she made that when she was in her 20s. So that's how old it is. I've always admired it. And they have no children. Both of their children passed away. And I said something to her one day when we went to Maine. She was like, "Do you really want that?" And I'm like, "I've always admired that. I thought it was the most beautiful thing that I've seen,
Right.
with something that she, and so she gave it to us one year when we went up there. And it's right in my living room. I love that picture. People are like, "Where'd that come from?" I'm like, "Listen, that's like, it's antique, cause she made it
Right.
all those years ago." And I mean, I would treasure it forever, but would my kids want it? Probably not. But it's something that I've admired, so
And I got
it's weird how that is.
Cause she made some beautiful quilts.
Quilts, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
have scrapbooks and that I've made over the years, and they're special to me. I put myself into them.
But her
And I'm
kids
not-
don't want to look at them.
They don't want to look
They
at
don't
it.
Yeah.
spend enough time looking at them.
Now, I have to say, when Fred and I married, so now
But
think,
it's true.
48 years ago, my granny had, and now you can begin to figure how old this thing must have been. It's called a pie safe. And in the pie safe, what it was, so figure, my goodness, let's round me to 70. I'm not at 70 yet. So back up even 30, 40 years, that thing is over 100 years old.
Mm.
So it's got two
Doors.
doors that open at the
And you
top
got a pie shelf.
and shelves in there. And back in the day, it had tin covering the openings of it. We've got glass windows now, and it had little holes in the tin because pie safe, they would bake. They didn't have Tupperware.
So
They'd
put the pie
They'd
in.
put the pies in there, and then they could close. They also didn't have Saran wrap. They could close the pies up in there and keep flies and things off of
Yeah,
them.
both of my grandmother had them in the South. They were big
Yeah.
in the South.
So I had it storing some of my china in it that I never used, and so Kara wanted it. So yay, somebody's taking the pie safe, and they came and picked it up on Saturday, and she's gonna her husband kept saying, why do you want this thing? Because it was a pain to get it upstairs, and so she's gonna display china in it, that is actually her grandma's china that she inherited it. She collected it, very expensive china. She'd buy it like a piece at a time. So Kara got all that china. She'll put it in that pie safe to display. Will she ever use it to eat upon? No,
Probably not.
I never used it to eat upon, because you could never put it in a dishwasher. So our inheritance is things
Mhm.
will fade. But let's see what Peter says about inheritance. Kendall, would you read the white?
The white again, okay.
Read
Praise
it
be
again.
to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade.
Okay, now let's kind of stack that out a little bit. So there's all this persecution going on, and his first sentence here is praise to God the Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, now why? There's got to be a reason, because he has given us a new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, into an inheritance. So think of the word mercy. That's on that beginning word of that third line. In biblical times, that word mercy signifies kindness, compassion, and forgiveness that God has given to us. Do we deserve any of that?
No.
Is there a limit? Do we show mercy to all people? No. Some we show more mercy than the others. Some I figure you didn't earn any mercy by your behavior, which sounds kind of sad. But I'm looking at it from my human eyes. And he says, no, in God's great mercy, what has he given us? A living hope. Who is the living hope? Jesus. Okay, what did Jesus, God, have to do so that living hope is alive? Did Jesus stay dead?
No.
The resurrection into that thing that will never fade. So I got, see, the new birth, because of the new birth, a living hope, and there's our inheritance. So it's all stacked together. Because of all this, he says you can praise God. Never mind what's happening to the side. Look what God has provided for you. That's pretty heavy. There's an old book called Fox's Book of Martyrs. And it has within that book, I don't know how many. Kendall, would you look up Fox's Book of Martyrs and see how old that is? But it has stories of those who were martyred for the faith. And Fox, I guess, was the man that wrote it. But so people being martyred is still going on today. So when you find that out for us, let us know. Now, this inheritance, this stuff right here, is what he's talking about. So it's this inheritance. It's kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded. Another word that looks at that. In the Greek, you're guarded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time.
It's 462 years old. It was published in 1563.
462 years, did I say it?
Yeah, 462 years old.
So-
John Fox published it in 1563.
So he was collecting in the 1500s the stories of the martyrs and putting them all. You can go to the library or go online and check that book out now, Fox's Book of Martyrs. So where's our inheritance kept? According to this, where's our inheritance?
In heaven.
In heaven. Yeah, it's not in a cedar chest sitting in your house. That I inherited all of Mama's fake jewelry, the costume jewelry. Sarah Coventry was the name for the. I wouldn't wear a single piece of it. It's not. I mean, it's really dated old. And so when Mia was in the house when she was a little girl, 2, 3, 4, she used to put it all on. So it has gotten some wear out of it, but not exactly what was intended. So our inheritance is kept in heaven now for us. So who through faith are shielded, it is guarded by God's power until the coming of salvation. Our inheritance in heaven is guarded by God's power. What salvation's already there, but what's the coming of salvation? What's going to happen with the coming of salvation? Who's coming?
Jesus.
Jesus.
And he's gonna take us, all of the ones that are ready and waiting for him, back
So
with him.
our inheritance is kept safe until the coming of Jesus. And because then it's ready to be revealed in the last time. Our salvation doesn't wait until the coming of Jesus. Our salvation is already here. But it's all kind of going to, when we see Jesus, it's all, I think, going to make sense. Now, another thing, do you know, Jeannie, there are 3 different biblical theories on what happens to the Christians when Jesus returns in the tribulation. See, what you were telling us was we're zipped out of here before the 7 years of tribulation. Okay, others believe within that 7 years, and Bible scholars can make things on all 3. Christians are here through 3.5 years of it. Then they're taken up. And that's called amillennialism, okay? First one's premillennialism. But then there's some believe that Christians got to live through all 7 years of it. And then that's called postmillennialism.
And then there's others that believe that the 7 years is not about the end of times, it's about stuff during the persecution.
Yeah, that it was written.
And there's,
Because
it's all gonna end on the same day.
So anyway, but our inheritance is guarded by God's power until it's revealed at the last time. So I know which I would prefer if the Revelation's referring to us. I'd rather be taken out before all this other stuff happens, personally. But you can see when John writes the book of Revelation, and he wrote that about 80, 90, persecution has been going hot and heavy. So his word was, he could easily be referring to what they had gone through during that time for the Christians. Because this Peter was written around 60 something. There's been 30 more years of persecution for Christians. Whew. So now, in all this, what is all this? This is all this, the inheritance. So this next thing we're going to read is referencing them back here. You can see why I'm having to go kind of back and forth with this, so we don't lose a thought. So think, and all this, our inheritance, you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief and all kinds of trials. So that word grief, that's kind of the umbrella word. That underneath that is the word persecution and all this stuff. So grief kind of encompasses everything. Now, he says it's gonna, a little while you've got to suffer grief. How long is a little while?
Well, one day is 1,000 years for Jesus, our God.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there you go.
There you're quoting that Old Testament. How long, if somebody told you, you gotta wait a little while and I'll take care of that for you. How long's a little while?
A few minutes.
Yeah, a few minutes. I'm waiting in line at Chick-fil-A. They're running a little slow, so I'm waiting a little while longer than I want to be. But how long is Peter saying you're going to have to suffer for a little while?
Till Jesus, I'm thinking he's probably talking about until Jesus comes back.
If we're looking, we're looking at the big picture.
Mhm.
For these Christians right here, how long do you think is their little while?
Well, I guess it depends on their age.
Till their life ends.
Till their life
Till their
ends.
life ends, yeah.
Do you want to do, I and you want to do that kind of suffering until our life ends?
Not on my preferred list.
Not on your
Right.
preferred list. That is not on your bucket list, Kendall.
No, it's
That's
not on mine.
It is not on us. But here he's saying, greatly rejoice, because you're going to suffer just a little while. Their little while is a lot longer than my line at Chick-fil-A. You know? So this is, boy, the idea of rejoicing because you're going to suffer for a little while, and that little while may be years. Okay, Kendall, would you read the next scripture?
These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed.
Okay, it says this would be greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire. We're going to watch.
So these have come means the persecutions and trials.
Yeah, these are the persecutions. We're not going to watch.
Gold is one of the softest and most malleable of the metals.
I want to skip all that down. Because it's the refining process. We're not, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to. Okay, there we go.
100 meters long and measure 3.5 centimeters in diameter. Gold in its natural state isn't pure. It's usually intertwined with silver or other metals. So the mined ore has to be processed afterward to isolate and extract the gold. A metric ton of ore yields only about 6.5 grams of gold. After blasting the rock apart with explosives, miners use what's called a muck machine to transfer the ore to cars headed to the main shaft and then above ground to the mill. There, a crusher reduces the large chunks into smaller rocks the size of gravel. A mill then pulverizes them to the texture of beach sand.
And
The
that's not all
factory
gold
adds a
there.
water and cyanide solution. Then another mill grinds it further into a mud-like pulp. This pulp flows into large settling tanks. The wet solids, being heavier, sink to the bottom. The water at the top drains to another area. Workers transfer the wet solids to an agitation tank and blow in air. The oxygen sets off a chemical reaction between the cyanide and the gold trapped in the ore, triggering the gold to dissolve and leach into the surrounding water. Drum filters then separate the water from the solids. This water now joins the water that was separated earlier. Zinc powder is added to solidify the dissolved gold. To smelt into bars, a chemical cocktail needs to be prepared. Manganese dioxide.
Okay, I'll stop with that one. I didn't have a clue what it took to refine gold. And cyanide, what will cyanide do to you personally if you ingested it?
Kill you.
It'll kill you. They use cyanide. I don't know the exact process of how they did that, and let me close that down, in biblical times, but they knew how to refine gold. I would imagine it was incredibly more harder for them because they didn't have all those machines. So think about how hard it would be, and look what he says again. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire. So gold, even though the hottest thing can make gold, you have to make gold happen, it's still going to perish. But it may result, look, your faith is genuine, then go to that bottom thing, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed there in the future. In essence, when you get it, I've never been to, anybody been to Fort Knox? Really, what was it? Did you get to see and?
Oh, no, you can't get close.
Okay,
It's like, you can see it from a distance.
okay. But those gold bars have a stamp on them. Gold is heavy, by the way. Did y'all know that? It's not like picking up some.
No, it's heavy.
It is heavy. What was that thing? There was a thing that came out, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. There is concern that a lot of gold bars have been lost. I don't know if that's true. I've gotten really focused on fact checking on anything that goes on Facebook because heaven knows.
They were taken out in 1965 by Goldfinger.
Are you
Jamie.
kidding me?
No, I just let it.
You're just messing with us.
In World War II, they took a lot of the gold out of Fort Knox to make magnets, to refine plutonium to make the nuclear bomb with.
And in Norway, there's a really good about the story children's book, and the title of the book is Snow Treasure. It's like 4th, 5th grade reading, and it's how these children, the little community, had gold, in essence, bars, and had been occupied now by Germans, and they did not want the Germans to get this because it would be used to help finance the war. And so the adults figured out a process that children were moving bars of gold on their sleds. Germans thought the children were out playing. This is for real. This wasn't on Facebook. Eli and I read the book together. And then once it got down there, the city was located on the coast, and there was a particular ship that they would sneak it onto. And ultimately that ship, I think, came to the port of Baltimore. And then that gold was held for that country after the war was over. But our faith says this, it's never going to perish. It's never going to pass away. God put his stamp, I called it, if you ever looked on the back of nice china or something, what does it have sometimes on the back of it?
It's got a stamp.
It's got a stamp, sometimes referred to as a maker's mark. My dishes, everyday dishes, they're glad, well, they're not Corelware, but just regular. ironstone or whatever. There is no maker's mark on the back of those things. I got them on sale. You know, nobody's special. But God's stamp is on us, because at the end, we may have praise and glory and honor. We show that when Jesus Christ is revealed. Okay. Now's our time. Okay. Go ahead, Kendall.
Though you have not seen him, you love him.
Who have they not seen?
Jesus.
Jesus. These people are sitting in churches and provinces in Turkey.
And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation of your souls.
So you don't know him, you haven't seen him, but you have believed, and then salvation. Now, in case that sounds familiar, Jesus, John 17, 20 and 21. I'm not sure what that typo, that was the translation I got it from. There isn't a translation identified with letters of VGN, by the way, so ignore that. So Jesus prayed this. So in italics, Thursday night, upper room. My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you were in me and I am in you. Jesus prayed for us when he sat in that upper room and he prayed, because we never saw Jesus. We can't imagine him. He says, but you've not seen him, but you love him. And this is going to be expressed, because remember, that's all that horrible stuff you're going through. The end result of your faith is salvation. For this people and these areas and these 5 churches. Turkey may be far away, and Nero's sitting over there in Rome, but persecution is kind of filtering on over to these people in Turkey. So y'all, I don't know, how are we only got about 2 minutes. And this kind of falls off on what the pastor was preaching about. How are we persecuted for our faith? And no, people are not being killed in America for their faith. People in other parts of the world, absolutely. Are being killed for their faith. Any ways persecution for people's faith can happen? I don't know if you followed the story a number of years ago. This couple owned a bakery, and they did not want to bake a wedding cake for this gay couple, and lawsuits were filed against them. And see, they were standing on the faith that we have the religious liberty to not do. They'll bake any other kinds of cake. Didn't matter gay or straight, just they were not going to do a wedding cake. They ended up having to close that bakery because the amount of money it took to, I think it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, I'll have to look that up. Yes, and that's not the only things that have happened where there has been persecution because people have chosen to live their faith.
Well, I know of churches that were closed because of that same purpose. You know, they would not perform the
Ceremony.
the ceremonies. Yeah.
And not marry a gay couple.
They wouldn't marry a gay couple and stuff.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, we've known a few churches that were shut down for that.
During COVID, California, I think, was very hard on churches. Their policies more so than policies on other things. And
That's the thing that comes to my mind of, in this country, religious persecution, is that certain political elements saw COVID as their opportunity to suppress religion of all kinds,
Yeah.
all
and
kinds.
they did so.
And it took, I know Pastor John was on a committee here in Anne Arundel County that had to push and push and push for churches to be able to open up again against Stuart Pittman, the county administrator, whatever he is.
Executive.
Huh?
Executive.
Okay. So even in our county, churches were not receiving equal treatment as other things were receiving equal.
And that persecution, which, you know, still pales in comparison to Rome murdering Christians, but still that persecution resulted in financial problems for churches having to close down,
Yeah.
reduced membership, it had a real serious effect.
It did.
I think
Because
some
it was,
people now still haven't come back to church
it's
from that.
stopped the spread of the gospel that would have happened within, you know, a church. So all that we were doing online, streaming online, there were a lot of little churches who could not afford to do that. And so they really did end up closing and are still closed. Yeah, the church in essence dissolved. So we were blessed that we had the money and the technology to be able to stream our services, because not all, and this wasn't just Baptist that closed down, it was everything. It affected all churches.
This is the reason why this is how we got here, is because our church never went back to a building.
Yeah,
You know, we really didn't have one, we were renting a place, looking to buy, you know, something or whatever, but they just never went back.
yeah,
And they still haven't gone back. They're still doing everything on. I told George, I said, that's not enough for us. I said, we need to be
With
around people,
yeah.
you know, because doing that online, how much of it did you really do? How much time did you really sit there
Right.
and listen, you know, and stuff? So, yeah, so,
Sit
I
around the
mean-
yard.
so, yeah,
She
so,
was saying,
I did teach Sunday school every Sunday, because I used the streaming service from the university, but not everybody had that,
right,
you know.
right, so.
So, it was the effort to impede our
Yeah,
faith,
they definitely
and that
used a
was
lot
a
of that.
way to do it.
And they're still trying to use that to this day, that COVID.
And so much of what they said about COVID was not true at all.
No, it was not.
well,
So let me say goodbye to the people who have listened out there. Our classroom got warmer, so hope you're warm at your house. But folks, y'all have a good week out there.